whoever and wherever you are.
You're listening to We Hate Small Talk
With Cindy
and Yimin. Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of We Hate Small Talk. Today we are diving into something a little more serious. Right now, while we're recording this episode, it is almost the end of tax season, so we thought it would be a perfect time to do an episode all about how we manage our money, and as you can tell by the title of this episode, why we hate negative cash flows and what we do to try and best avoid that in our life.
Yeah, so today we're going to be really asking Yimin to share her expertise on how she manages her net worth and saves up for that house. And I think I have a lot of poor habits that I almost want Yimin to give me some advice on.
Yeah, that's interesting because I feel like when we live together, we never really talk too extensively about how we manage our money. And before you told me that you didn't really manage your money, I wouldn't have expected that from you. Like, you seem like someone who knows what you're doing. You seem confident, and I just always expected that you would just know how to do all of that, especially because we've been working and all of that. So I was very surprised to hear today when you were telling me before this recording that you didn't know as much as I thought you did.
Yeah, exactly. Yimin was absolutely appalled that I don't manage my money. And I think this is a really interesting episode because I personally think that, money habits and financial literacy in general is really built on top of the foundation of what your parents have done or have taught you throughout your life. I guess to start then, we can talk about at what age we were actually aware of this concept of money, as well as maybe our first interactions with it. So for me, I think in an Asian household, my first concept of money was getting the red pocket money from Chinese New Year's. And that was the first time I realized, oh, this paper is a thing that you can exchange for goods. And I remember in kindergarten, one of the exercises we had to do, and I remember this really clearly, is that our teacher told our parents to give us all like a $10 bill, and we would go to the supermarket or like the tiny little grocery place to purchase something. And it was kind of to reinforce the idea of like, with this paper thing, you can buy things that you like. So I think my initial view of it was always, money is a way for me to get things that I like, but I never understood how big this concept was because, with Asian parents, they would take your red pocket money and be like, let me keep it for you. Like, let me store it until you get older. So I never realized like my money was like such an important thing, but I kind of was just aware of it at a very minor level.
Mm-hmm. That's really interesting. And I love how you brought up the red pocket example because I kind of forgot that we even got those. And I think getting the red pocket every single year played a huge role in helping us manage money because the first question that you have after getting it is like, okay, what do I do with this? And it's also interesting that you said that they would take it and store it away for you because my parents actually never did that. They would give me the cash and then I would just store it. I remember I had this drawer on my desk and I would just put all my red envelopes and cash in that drawer. And then one day I was asking my parents how I can the concept of a bank and how I can open an account to store all my red pocket money because I didn't want it to be just sitting around. And this was also brought up by my parents. My mom, I remember her saying to me you should really consider opening an account in a bank so that you can put all this money because if someone robs us, then they're going to take all of your cash. So you want to put it in a safe place. So I remember opening a bank account really early. I want to say I was 11 or 12 years old just to store all of my red pocket money. And you mentioned that parents play a big role in how you manage your money now. And I think that one thing my mom had always emphasized to me growing up, and I remember her saying this, is you need to be independent. Independence was a trait that she instilled and grilled and drilled into me. Some of those words didn't make sense, but I definitely think she said those things because she wasn't that independent herself. Like, I think because she wasn't super independent with money and she wasn't super knowledgeable on how to best store or invest or save money, she wanted something more for me, and that's why she always told me, you need to educate yourself, you need to be independent. And although she couldn't do the educating to me, she always encouraged me to like seek out those resources or like learn more, because she was like, I can't help you in this department, like both my dad and me, like we don't know about this, so you need to know about it.
Okay, see, this is where my parents goofed because they took all of my Red Pocket money. And so I had no concept of doing that. The difference is also that my mom was very intuitive with money, and she worked in commerce, like she dealt a lot with things like this. So she was like the person holding the purse strings in our family. And so she would take care of everything. And like you, I didn't open a bank account until it was very late. Like I didn't even understand the concept of a bank until probably when I was like in middle school. Like that was how late that concept came from me. And just yeah, never dealing with money on a regular basis really screws you up. And like I am exhibit A because now I find that it is very like a lot of the things that I wasn't taught when I was younger has come to bite me in the ass, I feel like.
That's interesting. And I feel like we both immigrated to Canada not super early. Like I came to Canada when I was 5. Another aspect that contributed to me being more frugal with money is being along the journey of seeing my parents have to manage on their own in a new foreign country, and knowing that money wasn't free flowing. I knew that there was definitely budgets set and limits, and I think that I also wanted to save as much money as I could, so like I wouldn't burden my parents with money.
Yeah, see, I wish I was a good child like that, but I wasn't. I had no idea. And like I think something that my mom actually told me was that regardless of how difficult they had it in the first couple of years, she made sure that I never felt like I was different from any of the kids in my class. Like if there were school field trips, if there were pizza days, like no matter how tight money was, even though I feel like it still wasn't that tight, like I don't think we ever like had serious issues with money. She would always make sure that I participated in everything. And I think that kind of sense of reassurance and like stability has really made me not see money as such a like a huge thing to worry about. And maybe we can share more then about what our personal philosophies are when it comes to money and what we think of it in general, because I think we've already mentioned some of our parents' influences on that aspect of things.
When it comes to money, I think I definitely see it as a tool to achieve certain objectives. I think that money was created in our society so that we could exchange things more easily and get the things that we wanted more easily. And I definitely see it that way. But I think growing up, my parents, and I also had my grandma who raised me for a couple years when I was younger, they had always taught me to work hard when I was young so that I could profit off of what I worked for when I'm older. So I think that this ties into like working hard in school so that you can get a good job, working hard in your 20s so that you can profit off of what you're making when you're older. And although I don't necessarily believe in this 100%, because I think that you should be happy and enjoying your life like in all of your years, not just looking towards the future. I do think that when it comes to money, I save a lot, and I think about my savings a lot and how I can grow my savings, because I'm always thinking towards how my savings will help me in my future in achieving the goals that I want, whether it's buying a house or buying a car or going on a vacation. Like I think that although I do see money as achieving some sort of objective or goal, I see those goals being future oriented, and I don't mind sacrificing short-term happiness for longer-term happiness.
Okay, see, I've realized this is the key difference between our mentalities regarding money, because I too see that money is like a tool, but I see it as like a means to an end. Like, and the end is just happiness. Like, I think money is there to work for us, and it's just a way for us to achieve whatever happiness we want, whether it be like I want to buy a cheesecake, or like, oh, I saw this purse that I really like. And that happiness is worth a lot more to me than like that money. So I'm like super present oriented when it comes to money. Like I will maybe like use my savings to buy something that I think at this moment is really important. Like, for example, I'll purchase a vacation for my mom and I because I think that's way more important than like the interest or the investment that this like money was going to make in the future, because I think living in the present is more worthwhile and having that happiness right now. But maybe the sense of like spending oriented kind of thought came because like my mom has always been very open-handed when it comes to money, because I think in her business commerce oriented sense, she always believes that money makes money and you should never be afraid of spending money, because the only way you'll be, I guess, more likely to want to earn money or like to be able to earn greater amounts of money is that if you spend first. And so it's kind of, I wouldn't say faulty, but like it's kind of created a sense for me that like, oh, I can always just earn it later on, rather than having that continuous, build up of like your nest egg, which technically you should do. Like that's the wise thing to do. But I agree with her. I think like money is not saved, it's made. So I choose to prioritize finding or figuring out new ways to make money versus like saving money.
Yeah, and I honestly do believe in your philosophy as well, and I agree. I like the part where you said like treating other people, buying your mom a vacation, all of that. I think that when it comes to other people, I've always been taught, and I do believe that you should be generous with your money. And I think that that also has greater returns, because if you're generous with your money, people will see that, and it's just like the right thing to do.
Yeah.
I think that that morally is the right thing to do, but I don't think that when it comes to myself, I think the same way.
Oh.
Like, I think that when it comes to me personally spending money on only myself, I really think about if this is going to be a worth it purchase. I was talking to you earlier before we were recording and saying how I have a monthly budget every month of what I can spend on things that will only give me temporary happiness, like Uber Eats and like food purchases, essentially, like not groceries, but like your average drink or fast food purchase. And I allocate only $100 a month to that because I know that it's not going to make me happy in the long run, and it's not really a valuable purchase for me. And I think the same applies with buying myself clothes or jewelry or a bag or something that would make me happy temporarily. But I think, like I was telling you before, like spending money also gives me anxiety, which I don't know if that's really bad and cause for therapy, but I think that living with my grandma when I was younger, like she was an extremely frugal person, and she would always say like, if you can make it yourself or if you can find another way to like get it, then why would you spend money on it? Like she would always make everything, if she could, like our clothes, our slippers. She would always make food homemade. She would never want to buy it. And even though I don't completely agree with that, I feel like some of that has been instilled in me, because it's like, if I don't need it, then why would I buy it? So I think that comes with a lot of purchases for myself, because I feel like I already have so much that like I don't really need anymore.
Yeah, definitely. I think like especially probably during this quarantine, like a lot of people are seeing what they have in their homes and reflecting whether like materialistic or consumerism desires are actually like necessary. And you realize like a lot of money you're spending, prior to quarantine really wasn't well spent. And you actually don't need much to live on. But I think for me, this is interesting because a lot of friends have told me this. I am very hard to shop for or to get presents for, because I'm the type of person, if I see something I like and I think it's a pretty good price, or I think it can bring me a lot of happiness, I just buy it. Like I don't have second thoughts about things like that. And I treat myself very well, just like I treat others well. And so I think it's like that type of mentality that's been lasting, because my mom always said for girls, you need to raise them with a lot of wealth so they don't get distracted by that when they're growing up, and they know how to treat themselves well. And like, yeah, maybe I treat myself too well now that I think back on it.
That's so funny because my mom has said the exact same thing to me. Like the Chinese saying where you have to raise girls with like a lot of wealth so that they don't get blindsided when they see it like in a man when they're older.
Yeah,
And then with guys, you should treat them like you should make sure that they know how to work for their wealth because
exactly.
you don't want them to be too reliant on like their parents or whatever when they're older, and you want them to actually know how to do things themselves, which is a very old way of thinking, but honestly I agree with it.
Yeah, long live the double standard, eh?
Yeah, like I don't know, like I feel like a lot of Chinese sayings have a lot of merit to it because maybe it was because we both grew up as only children, so we were raised with a lot of wealth and attention because who else were our parents going to give it to? And so yeah, like I definitely think that now I'm not blindsided by wealth. Like look more to like who a person really is. But having said that, I am still pretty frugal with my money.
Yeah, this is really weird because see, we have a lot of like similar upbringings and like things that were told to us, but still, Yimin is more smart with her money versus me. And I think the only sense of like maybe the only good habit I have is that I have something called a fuck you fund. So this is an idea that I have had for a very long time, and it stems from your idea of independence. And this is something that went around on the internet a couple of years ago. I think I saw some people talking about this. And interestingly, mainly female influencers who kind of started this idea of this fund where you can pack up from any sort of situation and immediately say, fuck you, I'm out. And this is almost kind of like the concept of an emergency fund where if you weren't happy with where you were working, or, you know, if your significant other, you know, wasn't contributing or whatever, like this is almost a way for you to regain that independence. And so this is, I think, the only thing that I've kept up, like an emergency like slush fund. And yeah, like I think this is super important for especially, I would say, like millennials and younger people, because you have a lot of instability in your life and sometimes you're forced to make decisions that you don't want to simply because like, oh shit, like I have bills to pay, or like, you know, maybe I'm splitting the rent with someone. But this kind of allows you to bring a little of that independence back.
I really love that. I think that everyone should have a fuck you fund. And I would agree. I have something like that too. It's just called the money in my savings account. And something that we learned in wealth management, which is a course that I took in 4th year of university, is you should always have enough money in your savings for 3 months of emergencies. Like if something really bad happens to you, then you should have enough money to cover 3 months of any expense, whether it's rent, food, anything. So calculate that, do the math. It's probably going to be a couple thousand to over $10,000. You should have that amount in your savings account so that you're ready for anything and it's easily accessible. And I think that that's like something that's really important. But I also think what's really important is having goals that you should be saving towards. And something that I had started doing like last year was really thinking about what are my like 2 or 3, even like one massive money goal that I want to be saving towards. And it helps me like make decisions with my money better because I always ask myself this question, and Cindy always makes fun of me, but I always ask myself, like, would I rather have this money go towards saving for this goal, or would I have it be spent on what I'm thinking about spending it on? And if the answer is like, no, it's not worth it, I'd rather have it be spent on saving towards the goal, then I will just not spend that money.
Yeah, so we can just replace the words the goal with a house.
Hey, houses are very expensive in Canada. You can never start saving too early.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think like this kind of leads us to the next part, which is like a little bit more of the nitty gritty and kind of figuring out exactly what techniques our financial literacy god, Yimin, will share with us. I think I kind of want to know in more detail about how you organize your like spend, save, and investment portfolios.
That is so funny. I am not a god of anything. So when she said that, I was like literally cringing. But Yeah, like I think that the most important thing is to figure out what tools you have available to you. So I think this depends largely on the country that you live in. But here in Canada, we have TFSAs, RRSPs, RESPs if you have children, but I don't think anyone listening to this podcast does, except for my mom.
Shout
And
out to your mom.
yeah, shout out to our moms and dads. But I think like the biggest tools that I will use for my money is the most obvious your checking and savings account from your bank. And then for me, a TFSA and an RRSP. And then if your employer offers it, if you're lucky enough, then also a pension. So I think that these main tools, like now that you're aware that the government offers you this, you can decide what percentage of your earnings or what percentage of your money that you currently have. You can decide how much to allocate to each tool, each account. So for me, what I first did to find this allocation amount is I wanted to know how much I can contribute to my TFSA. And for those who don't know, a TFSA is a tax-free savings account. So any interest that you earn in this account is not taxed by the government. It is taxed once you take it out, and you can probably like Google it because I am not equipped to explain how the tax works. But essentially, like tax on interest is a lot in Canada. So if you can earn tax or earn interest without getting taxed, it's really a good deal. And because the government gives you a contribution amount of like 5,000 to 6,000 every single year, ever since you're 18, if you've never contributed, you probably have like a good amount. If you're our age, like 22, 23, you probably have at least like 25,000 to $30,000 of contribution amount that you can contribute. So that's the first thing. Cindy, am I boring you yet?
No, I'm just thinking, like, where was this when we were in high school or even in university? Like, why did we learn other stuff versus, real life?
Yeah, I think that something that did help me was taking a financial literacy course in grade 12, and that like helped me a lot with like looking into TFSAs and RSPs as like a tool for myself. I think RSPs are not helpful until you're earning income because whatever you put into your RSP, you can deduct it from your annual income amount, and that really helps with when you're filing your taxes and you have to state your annual income because the more you make, the more tax you'll get charged. So I think that is really helpful when you start working and you're at a job. But if you're not, then like you don't really need to prioritize looking into it. And then for me, I feel like I'm really lazy when it comes to investing my money. So I just use Wealth Simple and I've been using it for like 2 years. My returns have been really good. So I'm like very happy with it. And what I first initially did to like do my research on what robo investing tool I should even be using. So for those of you who don't know, I feel like this is such a confusing episode for people if you don't like read on this stuff. But Wealth Simple is just like a robo investing tool. There's other ones like Questrade on the market for Canadians. And I just do my research on like what they post on their website to be like the annual returns that they give their users. And then depending on that, you can choose what company you want to go with. And I just put all of my money in my TFSA with Wealthsimple and it just automatically invests. And then you just pay a 0.5% management fee, which is, in my opinion, very low for the returns that you get.
Okay, interesting. I have looked into Wealthsimple and I have used it, but I think maybe, I don't know if I'm risk adverse or like too old, but I'd just rather just have my money laying there not making money, which is like the stupidest thing to do. But yeah, now that we were talking, like I'm thinking back to like what I did with my money because truth to be told, I've worked a lot since like starting university, right? And I was telling Yimin that literally for my first job, I worked in a startup in China and I spent every single penny that I made. And I lived such a good life for a couple of months because I would just do whatever I wanted, buy whatever I wanted. And thinking back, I'm questioning whether was that happiness worth it? But I don't think I would have done it differently.
I think like it's okay to do that when you're in university because you only truly live once. But I think that when it comes to like when you enter the real world and you're like preparing to not live at home anymore, you kind of have to think about what you're going to do with your money. And that's when it all settles in. But yeah, I think that's totally okay for first year you to be doing that.
Yeah, and second year and third year. And now we're here. But yeah, no, I think, see, unless there's a fire underneath my ass about like being more aware of my money, I'm just like reluctant to do so for some strange reason, because I feel like maybe it's because my parents have already always handled my finances and made sure like I had everything I needed. Now, like when I'm still living at home, especially because of the pandemic and not really making any big purchases and not having any incoming cash flows, it's kind of, not that serious. But I feel like once I do enter the workforce, which is the countdown is starting, I'm going to have to start figuring this out.
I think that a lot of it stems from how unknown the whole like money market is to the regular person. Like I remember when I first invested in like my GIC in when I was like 14 years old, I was like, oh my God, what is this? Why am I putting away a large sum of money for it to like earn some like magical source of interest and for me to get it back in like 3 years, I feel like it's such an obscure world for the regular person and it never gets taught to us. So it's so scary to just start. I remember when I first put in my money into Wealth Simple, I was like so scared to do it. Like it took me months to even just put in like my first $100 because I was like so unsure of how it was going to go. And it's so foreign, just like the entire concept of investing your money into arbitrary, intangible things that will make you more money. Like, I think that this whole world doesn't, like, we don't get educated about this whole world enough. And that's why not enough people know how to properly manage it. And even me, like, I feel like the only reason why I know like the basics, the very basics, is because I went to business school and I'm actually interested in learning about it. So I like will take my own free time to like watch YouTube videos about it. But it's not something that comes easy. I think it's like so complex. So like even I have trouble understanding a lot of it. So I just want to say I feel you. Like I definitely feel you.
Yeah, I feel like there's always this like shroud of like prestige and mystery for like a lot of financial institutions. And I think as a business student, you're kind of expected to know at least what the heck happened, like in the '08 economic meltdown, or like, the logical things that, why did this happen? And that's on a very macro level scale that you probably, unless you're working in that realm, don't put to use. So we never really learned the nitty gritty of managing your own personal finances or like filing taxes. And oh my God, like filing taxes is such a process. Like I never did taxes. Like even though I was earning money, I would just give it to my mom and she would find her accountant and they would just figure it out. But I think last year I helped my mom out with filing her taxes and it was such an intense process. Like I made some spreadsheets, which I was like, oh my God, I actually learned something in business school, and like calculating like what her like contributions were, like deductibles, etc. That whole process just made me really take a look back at the things we were being taught in schools and whether that actually translated in making us a more worthwhile member of society. And I realized a lot of the time, no. Like we never learn any real life skills and kind of have to figure it out with the things that are available online. And thank God there's a lot of resources. Like you mentioned, a lot of YouTube channels teach things like this. But like even then, there are so many different sources you could look to and it just gets very overwhelming very quickly.
Yeah, I think taxes is a huge thing that I am still very unsure of. Like I literally just use TurboTax every single year to file my taxes and they're very easy. They literally just ask you to input like numbers and you just input it and then magically your taxes are done. But I'm definitely not getting the full annual return that I could be. And I think that Like maybe honestly the solution that we learned in wealth management class is to have your own personal finance person. Like you should have like a wealth manager or like an accountant to like help you with these things, like professionals who can specialize in this so that you don't have to. And I completely agree that if you're rich, like you should definitely have that. But if you're like us and you're just trying to figure things out right now, like yeah, it's very, very hard to like get your head wrapped around everything. And I think that like online tools like definitely help. And even just having an open dialogue with your friends and just asking them what they do. Cause I feel like that's when I start to learn when I ask my friends like, oh, how are they managing their money? And then you learn like things that you never would have thought about.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's such a weird societal construct that it's like impolite to ask about money, or like you should keep things hush hush. I feel like that's such a dumb rule to have, where I get it. Like sometimes like it's uncomfy to talk about like how much you earn, or like that type of aggressive way to ask. But I think especially between friends like Yimin and I, or millennials, we can only help each other if we learn more about things like this, right? We can like negotiate with our companies about our salaries, our benefits, talk about, the returns we're getting, how we can invest. And it's not like us against the institutions, but like low key, guys. It's us against the institutions. So like please talk to your friends. Like I remember talking to Eamon when we got our signed offers and we were comparing like, oh, is this normal? Is this industry level for, your base pay, your bonus, your benefits, etc. And if it's not, the first thing you do is you go back to your company and ask for exactly what they should be giving you. And I think it's not like thick skin to ask for that, because you're simply asking for what you should have.
100%. I am so thankful, honestly, that I can like talk to you about things like this, because I feel like some people are still uncomfortable with bringing this up. And like, I think honestly, the more knowledge that we accumulate about how much other people our age who are graduating from the same school as us are getting paid, the more knowledge we have in our tool belt to like essentially like advocate for ourselves.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think that it is like, it's harder when you're actually in a job versus like when you're a new grad. Because I think when you're a new grad, like it's easier to like get that information from your peers, especially like because we're so open with each other. But when you're actually in a company and you're like getting promoted to like a higher position, like I'm definitely not there yet, but I'm just thinking about like who I would even ask to be like, oh, is this pay average, if this kind of information isn't publicly available in your company's database, right? So I think like the older we get, it's going to be harder to navigate that, and I am interested to see like how we end up navigating that together. But yeah, definitely like openness is super key.
Yeah, but I'm like, I don't fault people that like to remain kind of hush hush, because I think even growing up in like an Asian household, like money was such a taboo topic. Like you don't talk about money because people are so afraid of seeming like they're flaunting it. And especially I think as we were both in business school, like the level, like the discrepancy between what people were making was significant. Like there was a huge gap between industries or roles. And so oftentimes I understand like some people felt like they didn't want to make others feel bad, but it's also like just because you're making that much now doesn't mean I won't be making more in the future, and doesn't mean like you can't really quantify like just because you're making more you're better than me or something like that. So I urge people to always talk openly and to know that, money, once again, is just a tool. It's not a measurement of anything. And like if we can help each other get more of it, hell yeah, power to the people, right? Like
Exactly. And like I feel like I hate that our society has become such a capitalist society where like people place so much value into a person if they make a certain amount. And like the more you make, like the more important you are, or the more people like respect you. And I really don't agree with that at all. I'm just thinking like how we can change that. I don't really think that there is a way right now. But
yeah, I think like this is like the most hypocritical thing ever. Two business students who've sold their souls to like corporations are like raging about capitalism. And like, as a dirty capitalist, but like low-key not really, but also kind of, like I think like our eventual goal is to have everyone around us live better and like, have more freedom to make choices that don't revolve around money, which is the best goal we can have. And opening up the conversation as well as like talking about it freely is like the first step. But yeah, like definitely acknowledging our privileges here, because I think both of us, we came from backgrounds that were stable enough to kind of, you know, help us out with college, kind of support us living wise. And a lot of people don't have that. And I think definitely, like you said, Yimin, the pandemic has really like shocked me. And maybe it's not all about money management habits, because I know people aren't living paycheck to paycheck because they want to, but it's also just a lot of people are almost born on a foundation of generational wealth that they can always fall back on.
Yeah, 100%. Like, I think that money management, like this topic that we're talking about, is like you can only do it if you have money to manage. And I am very aware of the fact that so many people just don't have enough money to like manage. So living paycheck to paycheck is their only option. And I know how privileged we both are. So yeah, I think that it's just really shitty.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, like, this is like the reason why we started this podcast, right? To talk about uncomfy things, or to like try to open up the conversation on topics that maybe you feel hesitant to talk about. So, I mean, if you start trying now, regardless of how small your net worth is, because, you know, we're all here, like, I think taking steps to understand these complex problems and the ways you can try to save and invest is super important. I guess we can like talk a little bit about something that a lot of millennials have issues with, and that's like student debt, or just debt in all forms, credit card, etc. I personally don't have a lot of experience with it because I am privileged and thankful for my parents for supporting me. But yeah, Eamon, would you like to shed some light?
Yeah, I think like for me, I'm also super privileged, but I did take on like some sort of OSAP, like almost 30K in debt. So, but yeah, like I feel like for me, like the rule that I have is pay off your debt before you start saving. And the reason why I have that rule for myself is because your debt will only accumulate more and more interest and become bigger and bigger. And so for me, I just feel better mentally if all of it is out of my way. And so like the very first thing that I did with like all of my money after I graduated university was like pay off the debt that I had. And like, I am thankful that I don't have any more, but I think that my philosophy in just saving a lot of the money that I made throughout all my summer internships to like eventually like pay off that debt is something that like has like, I think the philosophy paid off, like it's worked for me. So yeah, that's all I'm going to say. And I think that when it comes to like credit card debt or anything like that, like obviously try not to have it, but if you do, like be aware of what your credit score is. And I use Credit Karma personally just to keep tabs on what my credit score is. It's just like a free account, and they'll like send you notifications every month on like to check your credit score if you want. And obviously like you should try to be in like the high 600s, or like if possible even over 700, so that you can get the best mortgage rates for yourself like once you're ready to buy that house.
All about that house.
It's all about the house. But I think that like having a good credit score will help you like open up some doors when you're like ready to make larger purchases or take on like larger loans. So just be aware of it. And even if you have a shitty credit score now, like there's always tools to build it up. So you can always just Google that and do that. But literally my advice is just Google it. But yeah, I think we're both in privileged positions.
Yeah, and maybe to shed some light, like I'm almost ashamed to say this, but I did work in a financial institution for a stint, and so I kind of got the back end look of, you know, credit cards, credit scores, interest, etc. Oh my god, interest, it is your best friend when you're trying to save, but it also is your worst enemy when you're spending, because credit cards have one of the highest interest rates ever. And I think it's crazy how much people will spend and rack up their credit card and the accumulated interest that follows that. Like, it is just absolutely insane. And these institutions are not your friends. Like, they won't purposefully make you overspend, but they also they're making money from interest, right? So there is a certain kind of conflict of interest there, if you would say. But definitely, like, I think credit cards are so important to build your credit, but also like spending on a credit card is so scary. Like, I remember getting my first credit card like as I think I entered university and just being absolutely terrified I was going to overspend.
Yeah, like I feel like I check my credit card spend at least once a week. Do you have the app?
Oh, Yimin, I check it like once a day. Like I'm insane about my credit card spending because I'm not sure if it's because I work there, but it's like that anxiety has gotten even worse because like I will over put money into my credit card to make it a negative balance, which means that they owe me money just to ensure that I don't forget to pay an amount on there or whatever. And I know that's so silly, but I think it's just like such an anxiety point for me.
That's actually very interesting. Yeah, like I definitely don't have that same anxiety with the credit card spending, but also like if I ever forget to pay by a certain deadline, like I think it's happened to me once or twice in my life, like I'll just call the credit card and they're usually very forgiving with like getting rid of that for me. Do you do that?
I've never paid late on my credit card. See, as someone neurotic as I am, like that checks their credit card once a day, like I always pay immediately as that charge is like posted. Like I will immediately pay.
You don't even pay once a month. You pay immediately when that charge is posted?
Yes, like that's how psycho I am. Like
Wait, I never knew that about you. That is so interesting because you know the point of using a credit card is so that you can delay payments, right?
exactly. But what is the point? Like if I have the money, like I will just pay it. Like like I'm not making huge purchases. That's the thing too. Like I'm just like buying regular stuff or like it's my regular utilities that are getting like taken out of my credit card. And like, I think yes, it's necessary to build a credit score, but also I think maybe it's just because I don't understand like, you know, these financial services as clearly as I want to, so I'm always hesitant to trust even if I do understand it, like the inner workings of a credit card, because I've been on the other side and seen how many people go into insane credit card debt and how that impacts their credit score, as well as, you know, debt collection, like that entire process, I fear. I fear.
I feel like after this, I'm going to be more diligent about it and like be a bit more anxious about it. I feel like I'm a little too chill about it. I'm like, oh, but just pay it once a month. It's fine. A couple of days late. Like not late, but like when they send you the statement, they give you like almost a month to pay it off, right? So like
Yeah,
I will not
exactly.
pay it off as soon as they send me the statement. Like I'll just like, you know, wait a week and then I'll just pay it. I feel like I'm pretty chill about that.
Okay. See, like I think my parents are like that too. I don't know what the heck went wrong with me because like I literally have my notice on for both my spend tracking app and my like actual card app. And as soon as they're like, oh, you're spending this much from this person, as soon as that payment goes through, I'm like, okay, time to pay it off.
I actually love that about you. Like, I feel like that is so quirky. I've never heard anyone say that.
Oh my God, that's me, quirky.
Yeah, like, I feel like what you need, Cindy, is to open a TFSA. That was random, but I was just thinking that you just need to save some of your money, put it aside, and invest it.
Yeah, I think so too. I am going to do that. I feel like every episode we have, it's like Yimin's like, Cindy, you need to do this. Like, get back on Hinge, open a TFSA, like, figure this out. And I'm like, yes, I agree. You know, before I become an actual working member of society, I need to get my life figured out.
And I am sure you will. I have faith in you.
Okay, well, I mean, I feel like that's the end of today's episode. We kind of broke what's it called? Like broke the screen on a hush hush topic.
I don't know. Maybe we didn't.
saying?
Like, maybe we think it's hush hush, but like everything we talked about is pretty generic and surface level. Who knows?
Who knows? Okay. Thank you for listening to two business students give very unqualified advice on managing money, but hopefully this gives you an idea of why you should be talking about this with your friends and family.
Yes, and thank you for listening, and follow us on Instagram if you want to join the conversation, keep tabs on when we're posting. We're at We Hate Small Talk, And please send us any feedback that you have on our episodes, either via DM or, like anything, like good, bad. We want to hear it. We want to get better. So, yeah, hope to talk to you guys soon.